Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for standing by and welcome to today's webinar. I'm just going to take 1 more minute, excuse me, to allow people to sign in, and then we will begin. Thank you. Good afternoon again. Thank you for standing by and for participating in today's webinar. My name is Sarah Shastia. I'm a project coordinator at OCASI, the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, and I'm your facilitator today. Before we begin, I would just like to review a couple of technical details with you to make sure that we can make the most out of today's webinar and that you can participate smoothly. You should see something like this on your computer desktop, probably in the top right corner. It's your control panel for this webinar, and basically everyone is muted when they first log on to the webinar, but we want to encourage active participation. So during the discussion period, once the presentation is over, we open the floor for questions and answers. And at that time, you can choose to either type your questions to me in that chat box, which you see over here. You would just type it in and click send, and it will pop up on my end, and I will read it out loud for everyone to hear and for our guest speaker today to answer. Or what you can do is use this icon. This is the hand icon. When you click on that, it also pops that up on my end, and I know that you want to actually ask your question. So this is for those of you who have good internet connection and have a microphone or some sort of audio capability where you can actually ask your question directly. I would just like to ask everyone to ensure that your questions and comments are on topic and they're relevant to all listeners if possible. Also, please note that we're recording today's webinar and we'll be posting it online for those who can't make it today. And a copy of the presentations from today will also be posted on there. So the link to that website, if you don't know it already, is a wiki page from Settlement.Org. It will be shared with you at the end of this presentation, but also through a follow-up email that you will get in about 2 days' time. So this webinar is part of OCASI's Refugee Settlement Support Project, Sharing Practices to Build Bridges webinar series. And the series really aims to clarify roles and responsibilities, to increase transparency, and to strengthen collaboration between refugee sponsors and service providers. And the idea for it and its topics came from focus groups and roundtables that we've held over the last year with many of you that have signed on today. Today's webinar is the second in this series, and it's about what settlement services are actually about. Previous webinar recordings can be also found on our website in case you've missed the last one or the one from other previous series we held. So the links are here as well. So the current webinar schedule is posted on welcomeontario.ca. If you go to updates, you will find the heading Sharing Practices to Build Bridges. That has the current schedule of webinars, including the registration link. And the previous recordings and webinars and presentation slides are at wiki.settlement.org. You would go to Refugees and then Refugee Settlement Support Project. And as well, if you have any questions or comments, you can email me at refugeesettlement@ocasi.org. So I would now like to introduce to you Amanda Choo. She is our guest speaker today, joining us from Wood Green. And I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda, and yes, I'm with Wood Green Community Services. I do want to apologize in advance. I'm a little bit under the weather, so if I pause to cough or sneeze, I'm sorry about that. Today, my presentation is about what settlement services are all about and what we do. I do want to mention that I'm speaking very broadly in terms of the services provided, and I'm being very, very mindful that each agency may have different focus and specialization, and also provide other services and programs that I may not be covering today. Again, I'm just speaking very broadly, and based on my observation, settlement services provides four key areas of services, mainly settlement, information orientation and referral, language training, employment supports, and community connections. So what I'll be doing is just touching and elaborating on each of those areas briefly. All right. So let's start with information and orientation. The objective of settlement information and orientation is to help newcomers, both youth and adults, make informed decisions about their settlement and better understand life in Canada. What we want to do is provide timely, accurate, and relevant information so that newcomers know about Canada and the community in which they are settling in. Part of it includes helping newcomers feel welcomed and become engaged in their communities. Settlement services can be provided on a one-on-one basis, in person, groups, and some agencies even provide online services. Now, where can we access settlement services? Very easily through agencies like Wood Green, and there are actually many, many others. Later on, I'll give you a website where you can identify a list of settlement agencies in your area. You can also find settlement services providers providing services in ESL classes. So they are called settlement services in LING classes. So LING stands for Language Instruction for Newcomers to Canada. And these are provided on an itinerant basis at LING sites. You can also access settlement services at some of the libraries. They're under what we call the Library Settlement Partnerships, and it's offered in 11 communities throughout Ontario. And the idea is that newcomers can easily access settlement services right in their neighborhood in a library near them. The other places where settlement services can be accessed is through the school. And some of you may have heard of this word called SWIS, which stands for Settlement Workers in Schools. And these are some of the places where newcomers to Canada can receive settlement services support. And as I mentioned earlier, settlement services, they are provided on a one-on-one basis, online, in person, as well as in group sessions. So many of the settlement agencies also provide group workshops and activities, and they are aimed at providing orientation sessions on services provided by the government, IRCC, MCI, and also City of Toronto. And it also covers topics such as recreation, social benefits, and community resources. Now, I also want to mention that for some service agencies, service providers, they also provide services for youth. And they have special programs meeting the needs of youth. And youth are from the ages of 13 to 24. And some of the programming that they do include homework help, leadership training, visits to universities, help with finding summer programs and summer jobs, and also some agencies also provide mentorships for youth. I'm going to move on to needs assessment and referrals. Now, one of the things that service providers provide in terms of settlement services is what we call needs assessments and referrals. When a newcomer come in to meet a settlement counselor, one of the few things that they would start doing is to provide an assessment. The idea is to make sure that we are able to provide personalized and tailored service to that particular individual and or their families. So needs assessment involve assessing their needs and making appropriate referrals, and also develop relevant programming based on the needs identified. Now, information orientation includes providing practical guidance to assist clients in managing the challenges of daily living in the new country, helping them access government, community, and social services, and then also connecting them to local community. And some of the topics that are covered during information and orientation on newcomers can seek help from a settlement counselors include an overview of Canada, sources of information, government websites, phone numbers, understanding about their rights and responsibilities, helping them with applying for important documents such as their social insurance card, their OHIP number, referring them to language and employment programs, education support, housing, health services, providing an orientation to transportation, and also making referrals to programs that reduce social isolation. I'll touch on a little bit on that community connections piece. In general, information and orientation, the goal is to increase knowledge of, for newcomers to increase their knowledge of life in Canada, understanding about workplace requirements, education support, and also broadening their network, be it whether social or professional network through different programs. Again, I'll cover some of that later on in the community connections portion of it. And I thought I also touch on one interesting aspect of information orientation, which is an initiative that's jointly it's a joint federal and provincial initiative to ease transition of newcomers by providing access to information about settling in Ontario and connecting to community resources and services. So we called it Orientation to Ontario, or you may have heard some settlement counselors call it O2O. So not all the settlement agencies run O2O workshops. And again, a list of it can be found in Settlement.org. O2O information can be found on their website, and it can also be covered in a workshop setting. In terms of a workshop setting, it's about a day and a half workshop, and it covers a broad overview of what is involved in the settlement process rather than in-depth information on any topic. The workshop itself also include a self-directed needs assessment and also group learning activities and also introduction of a personalized settlement plan. The workshop covers topics like getting to know Canada and Ontario, the government, settlement services. It covers things like living in their new community, healthcare, consumer services, again, housing, community engagement, provides resources to education and training, and also cover topics like employment, finances, and also people and the environment. One thing that I really like about the workshop is every participant actually walks away with a print material of useful resources and information. So the idea is really to equip newcomers with the skills and the resources so that they are able to also find information and access services on their own. So O2O again is part of the information and orientation support for newcomers to obtain information that can help them in the process. By the way, those print materials given out during workshops can be in different languages. So, for example, I know there are print materials in Arabic and also in Chinese and other languages as well. So the other aspect of settlement that we do cover is language training and skills development. And the objective is to help newcomers obtain the language proficiency needed to engage in all aspects of life in Canada, including the marketplace. So not all settlement agencies run language classes, but I would say that all settlement counselors would be able to refer them to language classes, and also make referrals to YMCA for assessment, their language assessment. And again, YMCA will be also be able to refer them to ESL or LINK classes. Again, the goal is to help newcomers overcome language and cultural barriers so that they can integrate into Canadian society. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me that language training, acquiring language is a really important aspect of settlement, whether is it for the marketplace or just being connected to the larger community, and also being able to participate, for example, in their children's education, attending school meetings and communicating with the different agencies to support them in their settlement process. Now, also to mention that some of the language training offered comes with support services to help facilitate the language training process, and it comes in the form of on-site care for newcomer children and also transportation assistance. Each settlement agency or service provider organization determines the eligibility on their own, so clients should check in with the respective agencies when they sign up for the program and when there's a need for it. I'm going to move on to employment supports. In terms of employment support, settlement agencies offer employment supports through many different avenues and channels, one of which is what we call job-specific language training. I think the more common terms that we all know is called the ELT, which stands for Enhanced Language Training. Enhanced Language Training is job-specific language training for internationally trained professionals. They are offered based on professional background. So, for example, at Wood Green, we offer ELT in finance and accounting, IT, healthcare, and office administration. Other agencies also provide ELT classes in those areas, including engineering, construction, human resources, and supply chain management. The other way that settlement agencies provide employment supports is through information orientation and referrals, connecting newcomers to employment services such as Employment Ontario so that they can get one-on-one job search assistance and maybe possible introduction to potential employers. And then agencies also provide mentorships, professional mentorships where they get guidance from local established individuals to help clients learn about the requirements of the marketplace or specific profession. Some agencies also run job search workshops, JSW, to help newcomers prepare for their job search. I will provide some examples later on of agencies that provide job search workshops. And finally, settlement agencies also provide community connections activities. The objective is to help newcomers develop social and professional networks. And the idea is to help reduce social isolation and help newcomers feel engaged and welcomed. And some of the activities conducted in this area includes mentorships. I mentioned that earlier, mentorships for professional purposes, as well as in terms of community mentorships. Now, with community mentorships, the goal is to provide language support. Mentors act as liaison between the newcomers and the broader community, and they help newcomer actively participate in community. Now, in terms of the professional ones, I mentioned about professional mentors helping them understand the requirement of job markets. Some of them can also assist them with guidance on the accreditation process, professional development, and best practices. Community Connections also offer English conversation circles. I know some agencies also provide French conversation circles. The idea, again, is to help strengthen newcomers' communication, as well as opportunities for them to connect with the community, connect with one another, and connect with mentors who come in to conduct these English conversation circles. And then finally, Community Connections also provide other group activities, again, aimed at reducing social isolation and also increase their knowledge and understanding of the community. So, for example, a popular activities run that we conduct for group activities, and I know many agencies provide, is mentorship activities where newcomers come and meet a group of mentors representing different organizations or from different companies, and they get to chat, exchange information, and they get to meet and mingle. Other topics covered during group activities can cover things that's recreational, social. They cover things like office dynamics, communication, and building confidence. So that's some examples of Community Connections program. I'm going to now chat a little bit about settlement services in terms of the outcome. For newcomers, the goal really is that newcomers have information to address settlement needs. Newcomers are aware of government and community resources and services. They have knowledge of life in Canada. They have a strong understanding of and connection to the marketplace. Settlement Services offers guidance in terms of how newcomers can get language and other skills for adaptation, and also opportunities and referrals to activities to help them connect with the communities. I've got here a list, some websites where you can identify settlement agencies. Settlement.org is a really good one, 211 Toronto, as well as the government websites. What I like about these websites is you can actually put in your postal code and they will identify a list of settlement agencies based on your needs. You can also look at settlement agencies based on language, based on specialization. For example, I do have clients coming to me and letting me know that they are much more comfortable going to language classes, all-female link classes. Government websites in 211 Toronto will be able to identify those specialized agencies with specialized services. Let me just go back to this. And as I mentioned earlier, my presentation is very general in terms of settlement services provided. Agencies, they do have their own specialization. An example would be, for example, Culture Link in Toronto runs a bike host program where they match newcomers who are open to cycling with mentors who ride regularly. So the idea is more community connection, but the way they carry it out is through a program that they call Bike Host. Culture Link also has another specialization. They have settlement workers that work with the Roma community, and you can access their website, Culture Link, in Ontario, in Toronto. Also, there are other agencies that provide settlement programs specific to young men or women. For example, at Wood Green, we have a program called Sisters in Action. It's for young Muslim women and helping them, make that connection. Sorry about that. And where are we? So yes, settlement services agencies, you can find them on Settlement.Org, 211 Toronto. You can actually even call 211 Toronto, or the government websites, IRCC, the Ontario Ministry of Immigration and Citizenship, as well as City of Toronto. And then finally, just a quick overview of Wood Green. Our vision is a Toronto where everyone has the opportunity to strive. The program areas we cover includes newcomer services, workforce development, health and wellness, children and youth program, seniors program, homeward bound, housing, and financial employment. And I'm with the newcomer services team, and we help newcomers newcomers with settlement, accessing programs and services, connecting with the community, help with educational supports, entering the workforce, and developing a sense of belonging and building confidence. So that is my quick, brief presentation on what settlement services are all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. That was very informative for me as well, very interesting. So thank you for that. And we have about half an hour actually for questions and answers, and also any other sort of discussions that people want to have on this topic. So for those that joined us a little bit later, there are two ways to really participate. You can use the hand icon on your control panel to, if you press it, basically it shows up on my end, and I know that you want to be unmuted because everyone is muted automatically when they sign in. So I can unmute you for you to ask your question, or you can type your question to me in the chat box, in the question box, and I will read it out loud for Amanda and for everyone else to answer. So we wanted this to be, as I mentioned earlier, part of a dialogue, this webinar. So you might have questions for Amanda, or if you have any comments, feel free to share those as well. We noticed that many people logged on today outside of Ontario as well, which is great. So if you have any comments or observations that you think are interesting to share, feel free to do that as well. So we have a question already coming in from Karen. The question is, are privately sponsored refugees eligible for the same type or level of services or assistance from settlement agencies as government sponsored refugees? So that's a good
Can you
question.
repeat the question?
Yeah, so are privately sponsored refugees eligible for the same services, basically from settlement agencies as government-sponsored refugees?
So my understanding is government-assisted refugees and privately sponsored refugees can access the same kind of settlement services. I do understand that government-assisted refugees have additional supports that they get from the resettlement agency programs, so that there is going to be slight difference. But in terms of what I've presented very broadly, privately sponsored refugees and government-assisted refugees can access this broad range of services. Again, each agency may have their own eligibility criteria for different aspects of the program, so you can always check in with the agencies that you've met with.
Right, and so the only agencies, as you mentioned, the RAP agencies, the Resettlement Assistance Program, that's only for government-assisted refugees, right? Okay.
Yes.
Karen, if that answered your question, or if you have another follow-up question, just let us know. In the meantime, we have a question from John. John is asking, do settlement services provide help at tax time?
So now at Wood Green, we actually have a financial wellness program. So we do assist with tax submission preparation during this time of the year. So my settlement counselors, they do not do the tax preparation for our clients. We refer them to tax clinic. And I like to, again, encourage everyone to check in with us, to connect with the settlement counselors. Even if they don't provide it in their own organization, they always have resources. They know of places that can help, so they can always do a referral. Part of settlement services is to make appropriate referrals for the needs identified.
Thank you. So anyone else with any questions, please go ahead and type them to us or use your microphone.
Quick question. So, I want to go back to Karen's question just again in terms of government-assisted refugees and privately sponsored refugees. So RAP agencies have a layer of support just for government-assisted refugees, but RAP agencies sometimes also do have settlement support for all newcomers. So please do check in with them as well, okay, for your privately sponsored refugees to obtain supports and services.
Thank you, Amanda. And just to show, Amanda had talked about how you can identify and find settlement services. So this is one way. You can go to Settlement.org. This is for those in Ontario only, but other provinces have similar portals that you can use. And you can click on Find Services Near Me and choose the cities or towns and the surrounding areas. So even at the 211, you can sometimes search by the type of service that you're looking for. So for the tax services, some refer out and others have partnerships with local accountants who provide their service pro bono, but that's certainly a partnership that they've created and not necessarily available everywhere. So I'm just going to go back to the questions. We have a question from Charlie. Charlie is asking, if the client has language barriers, how do they start, or I presume participate in community connections?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So if the client has a language barrier, how do they participate in community connections programs?
So I think my first suggestion is to connect with a settlement agencies that has settlement workers that speak that particular language. and sort of provide some explanation and orientation to the city, and encourage them to start taking some language classes. That in itself is helping them to connect with the community as a whole. And also, once they build up that community, it just gives them a little bit more confidence to step out of the language class into other areas as well. An example I can give you is we run a Syrian family support program. We see a number of our clients who actually start off with us with no English language. And we do have a couple of family support workers who speak Arabic, and they started off with joining them for activities, and then after that we started to include them in other workshops and events that requires a little bit more communication in English and a little bit of Arabic. So we sort of start them off with Arabic speaking activities and settlement workers, and then through sort of encouragement and coming up a few more times and building a little community, they felt more confident to move on to other activities as well. So just even small step to come out to language classes and meeting their own community, I find it really helpful. Another way is also to connect them with mentors, community mentorships where they are connected with individuals who, again, may speak a little bit of their language, and also introduce them to the wider community. So mentorships would be another suggestions I would recommend.
And maybe a follow-up question for me. The staff at settlement agencies, they also, when they do outreach, are they able to do outreach in their own languages, or the language of the target population?
Yeah, they can do that. So again, what I like about the some of these websites is you can actually specify the language, and they can be referred to agencies who have a couple of people who can sort of start them off in their language and then slowly help build their confidence to move out of their comfort zone into other areas as well.
Great. Thank you. So I guess, and also a follow-up question from Charlie is, does Wood Green provide mentorship or outreach workers?
We provide mentorships. We have both professional mentorships as well as community mentorships. Mm-hmm. So professional mentorships will be more geared towards preparation for the workplace, guidance on requirements in the marketplace. Community mentorships will be one-on-one support, language support, or just acting as a liaison between the clients and the larger community.
Did that answer your question, Charlie? If you have a follow-up question, okay, great, yes, it did. Great, Charlie. And we have a question from Gladys. Gladys is asking, can a person without status receive settlement services? And what about people with temporary resident permits or visas?
And this is Charlie's question?
This is Gladys.
Gladys, so it depends on the agency. Again, I would say check in with the agency. Some agencies do offer supports for clients in this area. I also encourage you to attend the next workshop. They will be covering on eligibility. Yes. Settlement services eligibility and intake, and that is on December 11th.
Yes. We have a question from the Hamilton Urban Core Community Health Center. Can you give any examples of the educational supports that you provide at Wood Green?
So in terms of education support, it's more in terms of information, helping our clients understand about the different requirements, letting them know about OSAP application. For our youth program, education supports can come in the form of homework help. We have youth settlement counselors out in the school helping with homework, and also in the summer, I know that they go on visits to universities to understand the different programs offered at universities in Toronto, not outside of Toronto. They take them on trips like that. So and also referring them to programs and services. Settlement workers are a wealth of information. And for example, if someone comes to a settlement counselor and they are trained in finance and accounting, and they need some support in terms of building understanding of requirements in that field, terminology used in that industry, then settlement counselors generally are very well versed in terms of enhanced language training programs or job-specific language training program that they can refer them to. So in terms of education support, again, it's more of a referral and information of resources in the city.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or follow-up questions or comments you'd like to make? Please feel free to type them or use the hand icon so I can unmute you individually and you can ask your question directly. I guess something that we can clarify also in the next sessions, as Amanda mentioned, is that privately sponsored refugees or resettled refugees are permanent residents when they arrive. So in terms of services that are funded for permanent residents, they can access them equally like others. I know that we get at Ocasi often questions about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is an interesting question, from Beth. Beth is saying this might be a difficult question, perhaps, but the question is, are all settlement agencies equal? Are some better than others?
They are not equal. Well, I wouldn't say they are equal. I would say again, very broadly, they provide the services that I mentioned, but every agency has a specialization or special focus in different areas, and some may be focusing more on employment, some could be focusing more on services for women, and some could be doing services for all areas. So what I do encourage all of us to do is when we meet with our settlement counselors to ask them questions, share with them your needs, and then work with them to develop that settlement plan and communicate with them on a regular basis to provide that support for the family.
I guess in terms of which ones are good or better, I would think that they're all, because they're funded publicly. If they weren't doing a good job, they wouldn't be funded again.
Mm-hmm.
So my personal experience is that there are no such thing as a bad settlement agency, but like Amanda mentioned, you have different areas and of course different languages. Sometimes when a settlement agency has more of an ethnocultural focus, they might not have all of the different languages available within their staff, but everyone does diverse work for sure. So another question from Beth, I believe it's a follow-up question. If we are privately sponsoring, do you recommend interviewing several agencies?
I would suggest I think you can definitely speak to different agencies just to have a sense of the different programs and services offered, and also clients can actually go to different agencies. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that there's a couple of agencies that provide job search workshop. So one of them is Access Employment. The other one is job. Let me just go to job skills. So they provide job search workshop, and then the clients may then go to, for example, Culture Link for their bike host program. So yes, I do think it's possible for you to meet with different agencies, have a sense of their program, and then go from there. I do agree with Sarah though that I think that the main focus of all settlement agencies really is to help our clients, newcomers, be successful, to settle well. And so every agency do provide all the information required and tailored for the client at the time of the visit.
Great. This is a question about the Syrian refugee movement. Is there anything specific that you have encountered with Syrian community in terms of barriers that they're facing with integrating into the community besides language? Mm-hmm. So any barriers that you that come to mind with the newcomers from Syria other than language? Barriers to integration?
I think information, getting accurate information is one of them. For example, understanding the sex education curriculum, just sort of helping them demystify it, and having a clearer understanding of the curriculum helps them to support their children in the process. Information about services. And also, I think another aspect is the mental health aspect of it as well, the overall well-being of children and adults, and just really helping them navigate different systems and accessing services to help them address some of these mental health needs that come out. And I would say language, mental health, access to information, and employment. Employment is the other area that, so employment and finances, they come together. So that's another challenge as well. And I'm actually really glad to say that I've seen programs coming out to address some of these challenges. So again, do connect with some programs that can help them address some of these challenges.
Great, thank you. We do have time for a couple more questions or comments, if there are any. Okay, we have another question from Charlie. What settlement services do you recommend for Syrian newcomers who need support outside their classroom or agency and in their daily life due to their language barrier? So I guess this is relating to after hours practical support. For example, how to take public transportation, how to talk with their building management, etc.
Can you read the question?
Yes, so the question was, what settlement services do you recommend for Syrian newcomers who need support outside of the classroom or the agency?
Community mentorships. I would say mentorships would be very, very helpful to help them outside of the classroom, navigating systems and providing information and being a support network to them. Mm-hmm.
So I guess we used to have many years ago some life skills, what's it called? Life skills counselors, I believe, who would be able to accompany people to a lot of these appointments, but I don't think that's available any longer. And the government-assisted refugees, they do receive that sort of support, but that's also for the time when they are actually housed or living at the reception center. They get a lot more of that hands-on support.
And also, I think that settlement counselors can also provide the support for them to connect with them and ask them and let them know that, hey, tomorrow I'm going to have a meeting with my landlord. Can you just let me know? Can you let me know what are the things that we need to be aware of? So again, spending that time and connecting with a settlement counselor outside the classroom and keeping them informed of some of these meetings that's coming up so that the settlement counselors can support them or at least connect them with resources that can support them.
Great, thank you. These are really good questions. Are there any sponsors online that would like to share how settlement services have been very useful to them in the preparation of the arrival of the refugees that they sponsored, or to the person that they sponsored? Feel free to share that as well. We know that people are connecting with settlement agencies, but it doesn't seem to be necessarily consistent across the board. So it's just interesting to hear what have been some of your experiences. And also, if you would like to share any of your feedback in a more private way, there will be an evaluation form that you can complete with more of your comments as well. After it will pop up after we end this webinar, and also it will be in a follow-up email. We can take one or two more questions. And I know sometimes it takes time to type them. So I'm just going to wait maybe another minute, and otherwise we can wrap up the webinar. Okay, we have one more question, or a comment rather, from Beth. Beth says, from her experience, from my experience, the sponsorship groups took on a lot of the work that a settlement agency might have done, and then the problem was at the end of the sponsorship to get the newcomer to use these resources. Right, so yeah, and that's a good point, because the sponsorship group members have a duty to provide practical support or settlement information to the refugees that they have sponsored. But it's always good practice to still be connected with the settlement agency. As Amanda mentioned, there are a lot of expertise that perhaps sponsorship group members don't have. They might be able to provide a more objective sort of needs assessment, and they can work together with the sponsors around the settlement plan and goals. And then that way you have that continuity after month 12, when the sponsors are usually no longer involved or not required to be involved. Yes, and Beth is commenting, in that way the newcomer is empowered as well.
Yes, agree with you.
Thanks for your comment, Beth. Okay, so I think I'm going to show you just one more time some of the links that might be helpful. We are hoping to continue this conversation and this discussion throughout the next few webinars. And if you're interested to stay in the loop and you want to be informed, just send me an email as well, let me know. You can also add that in your evaluation form responses. Again, the current webinars scheduled, the upcoming ones are listed here on the current website, on the welcomeontario.ca website. It will be on December 11th on the topic of actual eligibility criteria. So Amanda has already touched on it, and there'll be more discussion around eligibility criteria for different types of differently funded newcomer and integration services and programs, and what the intake process generally looks like and what it might look like at two different agencies, as we have two different speakers for that day. So I'd like to thank Amanda again, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. You will receive a follow-up email with the link to today's recording, the copy of the slides, and a survey link. And we would really, really appreciate it if you could complete that evaluation survey to provide your feedback. It's really useful to know what works and what other information you would like to have when we move forward in planning supports and resources for settlement workers and sponsors and refugees. And as I mentioned, so that link will be in the email. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me at refugeesettlement@ocasi.org. So on behalf of Ocasi and Amanda, thank you for joining us today, and we wish you a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.